jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
No, that's the worst.
That was the worst one. Oh, jeez.
The best would have to be Attilio's old Italian kitchen. That was like real home-cooked Italian food. It was so good.
Now you make me want to go. Damn it. Can
Unfortunately,
COVID
they're
be
not
over?
open.
Not that great. No, it's just...
No, it was good food, but the place closed. They
Oh,
Like,
they
when,
closed.
yeah, when everything crapped out in '08, they had just relocated to a new building, so they had debt up the wazoo, and then nobody wanted to eat, so they ended up going under. Well, no one wanted to eat out. I mean,
Right. Hopefully they resurface. Should have gone on the whole takeout order, but I know that every business was ready to accommodate that
well, I
request.
say when everything crapped out, I mean back in 2008.
Oh, wow.
They,
Shit.
they limped along for a few years, but there was just no recovering.
Man.
But,
There
oh,
you have
man,
it.
so good.
Making me want to go now. So, welcoming to the podcast, always, Daniel Nightmare Nerd Ryan.
Greetings, fellow horror fanatics.
And so before we get into this unusual trilogy that may or may not be related, it's not, don't worry. What was your introduction to John Carpenter in the first place? He just was always one of those talked about guys. Critics hated him, movie buffs loved him, and so it was just like it's pretty much just compared to that of all these other cult people who you hear about. You look in the TV guide, and the movie that was talked about either had a 1 or 2 out of 4 star rating, and yet on all the movie sites he was like rated a 7 or an 8. Just talk about rewriting film history is like, hey, it might have flopped in theatrically, but everybody has rented this 30 plus times and craves whatever. I definitely got into Escape from New York, and then I started watching all the other ones, Christine, Ghost of Mars, what's the other one, The Thing, and then there was Big Trouble in Little China, but They Live was definitely what made me a real big fan. How about you?
Well, for me, it was what else? It was Halloween, because my mom is actually a big fan of that movie.
There you go.
She actually became a fan of it because the year I was born, she was recovering in the hospital and watched it and fell in love with it. So she introduced me to that. And my dad actually loves Escape from New York, even though he's not much of a horror fan, but he likes that movie. Technically, I guess that's more sci-fi and action than horror.
Yeah. I mean, Carpenter was definitely... I guess the one that my family loves is Starman, which is kind of wild because it doesn't even really feel like a Carpenter movie other than the music, but there you go. It is wild how he just he picked his battles and then he retired at a good time. It was like people wanted to make a movie and he just now he's like, I'm over it, guys. Thanks for asking. And unlike some of the other guys who just kind of kept getting progressively worse, despite having, like they had more bad movies than they had good movies, and yet they were still revered as a legend, an awesome person, Like, I think if I had to name a few, probably Brian De Palma.
Yeah.
There's someone who should have stopped just when he was ahead, but yet he just
You ruined
so
your own theater a while.
even when you got some kind of control, it's just he's so used to making movies the old-fashioned way, and just movies aren't made that way anymore. So it's like, yeah, well. Francis Ford Coppola at least went back to just remastering or doing director's cuts of his movies. It's like, yeah, the market's trying. Yeah, I mean, I had no idea that I knew he. I've still got the director's cut of Apocalypse Now, like the final cut to watch on the Blu-ray, but I didn't know he also did one for Cotton Club, which everyone was saying was way better than what felt like the unfinished version that limped into theaters back in the day. So there you go. So here we are with Carpenter, so this movie, Vampires, the generic name, and yet I saw it very highly rated on a lot of movie sites, and then mixed, obviously critics hated it. I was going into it reluctantly, didn't really think much of it, but it was often on FX cable TV in the morning hours.
My mother actually gave me a VHS of this for Christmas one year when I was in high school. That's how I was introduced to it.
Damn. Okay. And what were the ads and other fanfare for it? Did you have other friends or neighbors who knew about it and you're like, I don't know, not really?
One of my oldest friends in high school, he was a huge horror movie fanatic, and he loved John Carpenter. This one was definitely not high on his ratings list.
And it's wild, I mean, because it had some serious competition. We've already had a bunch of other movies, like, again, often the ones that are talked about as being the ones that got this subgenre started are, you have Vamp from '86, you have Fright Night, then you got Near Dark and Lost Boys, and then you go in the '90s you'd already had.
I feel like that's part of why this one, in my opinion, is not the best. Just it was a really late comer to that whole like subgenre of trying to reimagine the vampire mythos and not use Dracula, obviously. This was what, 98? This one came out.
Yeah. So Blade had already come out, and 2 years after, prior, you'd already had From Dusk Till Dawn. So, and Anne Rice is becoming a thing. So there you go. It's got some serious competition. I was already familiar with Thomas Ian Griffith, who vanished off the face of the earth, despite marrying a well-known character actress and just being in some wacky martial arts movies. And here he is in not only a rare horror movie, he'd done some action horror direct-to-video stuff, but never, a movie where he's playing a vampire. And you got Sherilyn Fenn from, Twin Peaks, and James Woods before everyone knew he was a psycho, and then, Daniel Baldwin, who was always
psycho all along.
Yeah, he was. I'm just saying before everyone knew he was a psycho. Which is wild because he got stalked by a bunch of different crazy actresses as well. So it's like, damn. The craziness, carries.
It's infectious.
Just like the steak in this movie. I think this is a weirder movie because there's just really nothing that stands out of it other than making heavy use of the sun burning up the vampires. Like, we got to get them to the sun, got to drag them out of the cave. It's weird seeing Daniel Baldwin, who, other than Homicide: Life on the Street, was always just a directed video, made for TV movie actor. And so seeing him in a theatrical movie is like, wow, who'd have thought it? This is rare.
His big smash.
Smashing. I don't have a problem with any of the acting in this movie, but like it goes on for fucking ever, and that says a lot.
It's like painfully slow-paced movie.
And for whatever reason, that would have somehow worked for a '70s movie because that was the thing. In an '80s movie, I just have a feeling the soundtrack would have been a little more memorable. And really, the only thing I find interesting is seeing Kerry Tagawa, also known as the dude from Showdown Low Tokyo and Mortal Kombat, in this. Sorry.
On a note of what you're saying about the soundtrack, one of the reasons this one does not rate high on Carpenter's list for me is music is always a big part of Carpenter's productions. I mean, he's a musician himself.
Right. And
whether it's that, that famous score in Halloween, whether it's that minimal, boom, 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 boom from The Thing, or
yeah.
those incredible beats when Snake Plissken is running down the street in New York. But here, the music really just did not impress me.
Yeah, it really felt like Hans Zimmer or someone else, on just a lazier day. I mean, this could be an okay. I guess it could have been a fun theater visit, but at that time we were just, oversaturated with too many options. We're embracing, TV market, video stores. So I think
Vampires in particular, like you said, Anne Rice was in full swing. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was going on.
Yeah.
It had to be something spectacular to stand out and all that.
Right. I mean, Wesley Snipes had brought, a darker, not only just a comic book adaptation, but just kind of, once again, vampires are having that emo look, and then the, stylish, samurai Highlander type unstoppable guy. And so.
And then they sparkled.
Yeah, but years before they sparkled.
A long time.
And yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn just showed, hey, Tarantino and Rodriguez, teamed up to make one unusual movie that's part road movie, part vampire movie, and
made it work.
They made it work, especially referencing Carpenter. Like Rodriguez said, the main influence was Sold on Precinct 13. This kind of is following. This and Ghosts of Mars both kind of followed the Sold on Precinct 13 formula, but then they kind of just. I don't know if he was just too busy trying to get it done, if it was a Merc job, or just he's just like, hey, those who like me are going to see it. Those who don't, I don't give a fuck. So I don't know.
This does feel like kind of a lazier one on his part, and you can kind of get a sense that there was more he wanted to do with it, but something just prevented that.
It's strangely still watchable, though. As much bashing as we've been given on it.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah.
Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yeah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah.
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we're going to end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
could you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Semenoff, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Semenoff, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Semenoff.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's just an unimpressive movie. It's just like, okay.
For a really great director, this is not one of his better efforts.
Right. I would never rank it as top of the line, but at the same time, it's like, I just feel like there's going to be a director's cut of this somewhere, and so far there's a Blu-ray release, but I didn't see any.
And really not even all that noteworthy as like a bad movie would be. Like, not notoriously bad, just so middling that it just gets lost in the shuffle.
Right. And I have other people who swear by it, and I don't really get it. Well,
neither do I.
So, I mean, this is why it's perfect, because this brings us to the next movie. Sony was liking the business they made with it, so they made a sequel that commonly was played on Sci-Fi Channel before it was what you call it, sci-fi. And I know my parents would see part of it because it was just also played. I don't know why these were played so much in the evening.
Because they were cheap. They were cheap there.
Well, no, I mean the evening hours, because the content-wise, they're not that gruesome, is what I mean. Like, you could show them on even basic TV like UPN or one of the Fox stations, and no one would give a shit. But, yeah, this is kind of my favorite of the bunch, and I know that's gonna be horrify everyone because it really, yeah, it's also takes its sweet fucking time. But the second hour did have some fun vampire action and staking and explosions, even a car crash. And Bon Jovi actually did a really good job. And yeah, I know everyone's joking. It's like, he's always been a reasonable actor, but he's always, for a musician and rock star, he's always just appeared in the most unusual movies. Never like the trashiest of the kind. Maybe this is as close as it gets, but he would always be just some unusual drama or road trip movie. And here, you know, this is kind of a road trip movie, but he ends up becoming like the head of the hunters. And there were some other interesting people. In fact, Arle Hover, the bad gal from the first Blade, is actually also in this as the head vamp. So there you go, typecasting.
You know, and what you mentioned about the second half, arguably they learned the lesson from the first one about, okay, those are the better parts, so let's do a lot more of that.
Yeah, and well, pretty much, you know, direct-to-video, this is where direct-to-video is becoming infamous. People are just churning out stuff. They're no longer premiering them on the movie channels before they hit the video stores. Now, you really got to do something to stand out. And this still has a theatrical-looking look and budget. And it just, you know, vanished at the video stores and commonly played on cable TV. But it doesn't look crappy. Again, you know, it still suffers from taking a while, you know, getting there, but when it does get there, you're just like, hey, you know, that was at least more energetic. Now,
less exposition.
Yeah, it was way busier just having kind of, you know, this is a post Jeepers Creepers movie, so at this time, everybody's got to have some unusual, you know, establishing shot of a highway and moody score.
Oh, yeah.
It does a good job. I forget who did the music, but it did a good job of almost sounding Carpenter-esque. So I guess that's as far as the influence goes.
Considering he was barely involved.
Yeah, he definitely was. After the pitch session, they definitely said, hey, your services are no longer needed. And Sony, you know, this is where we're becoming better known at knowing them as the, you know, Japanese located studio that's, you know, mega business. They definitely start in their campaigns marketing everything more kind of like anime. And I know because, you know, that's when they start, you know, translating a bunch of Hong Kong films under their Sony Classics brand and embracing various markets. So good job on this one, I guess, all considered.
And that's also when that kind of thing was in vogue. You know, I mean, The Matrix and like Adult Swim bringing anime, it was the hip thing to do.
Yeah, it was definitely the most plausible way, and this movie does a good job of also not having just overdone edits and electronic music playing every minute to where you can't hear the actor speaking, like some movies were, you know, fell victim to. Hackery. And in those cases, a lot of those were just stripped away from the music video editors just because everyone was just so, they wanted that Blade and Matrix money, and it's like, you're not gonna get it. It looks shitty, and it is shitty. Or it's a guilty pleasure, but it is not anywhere near a good movie. So, and then the finalist, and this one had zero Carpenter involvement. This has like a Thailand set, bunch of cops and other.
This one, it's like all the Hellraiser sequels or the Amityville sequels. You know, it's one where you know this was started out as a totally separate script, and then someone just said, let's slap a pre-existing property's name on it to get a few more video rentals out of it.
Right. This one played on a very rare day. I'm sorry, guys. I'm making all the cable TV references. That was where a lot of just crazy gems like this would be, or
Our generation.
it just this one came on before it was Paramount Network. They were known as Spike TV, and this one, was when they would air a lot of goofy. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was after they had gotten rid of the TNN, and they said, "Let's just call ourselves Spike." The Turning is. It's an okay samurai movie. It has a very unusual cast. The main head of the hunters is played by Patrick Bateau, who is best known as playing the Doctor on the show The Pretender. Jared. He does an interesting job. He's been bit parts in other movies like the James Bond film A View to a Kill and even Clear and Present Danger. So
was on the TV show House, I believe.
Yes, he did a very key guest spot as like the estranged father or something, if I remember. And Here is the Star is Colin Eggleston, who was a soap opera star and later became known as the ex-con brother Frankie on the show Rizzoli Niles. Not shabby here, but also not much to his character. So.
When you're a small actor in big productions, that means you're a big actor in small productions.
And then you have Roger Wan, who's the stuntman and coordinator and brother it's not Michael Wong. It's shit.
Don Wan? Yeah.
Oh, Ron Wan, that's the one. But Roger is known for movies like Skyfall and Shanghai Noon as the main henchman in that, and so he's been around a while. Also, gets a lot of samurai action in this. Overall, I'm gonna give all these movies kind of a 3 out of 5. They shouldn't have even been a franchise, but considering, like you said, all the other ones where Amityville just should have never been one.
Pretty much by sheer coincidence.
Yeah, someone in marketing said, "Hey, people fighting vampires. It's the only way any of these are being seen." Part 2 definitely feels like more of a Carpenter movie than the actual Carpenter film, and I know that's going to be controversial for some.
He at least sold them his name, so they probably tried to make it resemble it a bit.
Yeah, the third one, don't expect it to be a Carpenter movie. I expect it to just be a typical martial arts film when you're tired of renting Jackie Chan movies. And again, if you are fans of the actors, it's worthwhile, and you want to hit. But other than that, it could have easily just been a sequel to Blade or From Dusk Till Dawn, and would have arguably also been better than some of how those turned out. So, there's been a Blu-ray of Vampires, but I'm still waiting on the one that we all truly want to see, because
like nothing remarkable, no special features, nothing that you didn't know already.
Yeah, I was looking it up. I didn't see anything. I mean, I can take a look again, but
well, like you said, it strikes me as one of those where Carpenter may have at one time been enthused for the project and thought, I can do all kinds of cool stuff with this. By the time they got to actually work on it, he no longer cared, and you get that sense there are gaps in there where you feel like he wanted to do something more.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I really don't see a reason why. I mean,
whether it was studio interference, whether there was something going on in his personal life, something just left a lot out of this project.
Yeah, so far I'm seeing. According to Amazon, apparently the Blu-ray just has behind-the-scenes photos and an essay. That's nothing.
That's an admission.
Yeah, that's disappointing, because I get that those who are just like purists of Carpenter will probably be more enthralled, but when you need to know about someone just to be more entertained, that's just still pretty disappointing. I've seen countless essays about this, people saying, "Oh, it's like a comic book. Oh, it's for the purist of the vampire purists." But I think they're just talking out of their ass. And I'm not saying don't check this out. And there's still some gotcha moments. There's some interesting visuals, but like, you know, Daniel and I have just been hitting on the head. There's some serious, just like classic must-see vampire film. I don't think so. I don't.
Yeah, definitely. You know,
There.
the first one I'll give credit, and this is going to be such a stupid thing to blurt out here. The scene where the lead vampire, he bites the girl on the inner thigh. I'll give them credit. That was a creative shot because I've seen shots of vampires biting people on the wrist or things like that. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I mean that's just it. There's some small moments that
touches of creativity, but otherwise it feels like they're just totally coasting it.
Like the machine that drags them out into the sun to burn them alive is interesting, but it takes forever just getting there. There's just all this other dead space. Not even the weapons really stand out. I mean, it's interesting seeing them use a mixture of spears and crossbows, but, you know, we've already seen that, and you can see that in any Hammer horror film. So, I mean, I'll probably give the Blu-ray when it's extremely discounted, but I can't see anyone.
And for my parts, with the original, something I found particularly eye-rolling is like the party scene with a priest who's obviously drunk and
yeah,
the corrupt Vatican official who wants to be a vampire. Like, just for that time period, it was just so in vogue to bash on religion like that. And I mean, hell, it's still fun to bash on religion. Why do you think I still love George Carlin? But
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But like for this movie, they did it in such an eye-rolling way. It's like, oh yeah, you're totally being hip. You're so edgy. Oh, give it a rest.
It's kind of like how in the 90s and even 2000s, every president had to look or sound or be acting very similar. Like, they had to be caught with their fly down like Clinton or be very incompetent at making decisions like Bush. And so it was just like, but they would do it in such a way as like, can we just have, right? Just have a president who isn't, just is his own thing and
isn't a jackass.
That, or we feel as its own creative thing as opposed to you're just using it as a cheap bashing tool. And like you say, is like it's fine to bash religions that abuse or brainwash people, but here is like, yeah, it just, I mean, the president and even Escape from New York wasn't all that developed, but at least it was short and just kind of simple. It was comic bookish and it worked. And here with these, Tim Guinea is a good actor, but if you want a better performance, watch something like Revolution or Stargate SG-1. You'll see him dive into a anti-hero type roles there. And Max Schell, that's a international name that's been in countless, productions, and yet, like you say, I didn't get anything from his priest who wanted to be a vamp. I find the idea cool. So for those who've been listening, I guess you can tell us you're fucking wrong. You don't get it. Please, we'd like to hear. But
the first time I've been wrong about something.
I would like to know why this has been. I think there are just so many other. Again, the B movie. Johnny and I, and even Daniel. We seek out B movies, but we want to have at least just kind of something that would make us want to even buy a poster of this and frame it, in our room. So if there's something we missed, please tell us. But other than that, this was just a laid back, mildly fun franchise to dive into and revisit. That's all you guys are going to get from us. So Daniel, where can you find us on the web?
Well, as always, the Nightmare Nerd. I am on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I write articles with House's Tortured Souls and now the Behind the Screams podcast. And you can find me right here with you.
Yeah, anytime, all the time. So tomorrow we're going to be recording Rodriguez.
Baby.
Yeah, some of them are going to be so bad they're good. Some of them are just going to be spoiled rotten. Some of them are going to be, hey, it was good, but thanks to contributions from other people. Oh, so other than that,
again,
always, man, always, and stay safe, stay out of your cats, and
and hopefully don't blow myself up with this pressure cooker.
Sizzle, sizzle.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up